Welcome to the new video of NeuroPhilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin. Rethinking discipline. We're taught to picture discipline as iron will, control, rules, rigidity. In that story, failing to keep habits means weak character. But real people don't behave like that model predicts. Plenty of motivated, intelligent, goal-driven folks watch their routines fray after a few weeks. The deeper cause is rarely laziness, it's friction inside the psyche. Conscious choice is a narrow bridge over a wide river. Beneath it moves the unconscious, desires, fears, memories, and patterns that keep acting whether we notice or not. When we ignore those currents, they tug the boat sideways, procrastination flares, motivation dims, and we label it failure instead of feedback. Add culture's glossy demands, be productive, impressive, tireless, and we construct a persona, a mask that wins approval. Masks aren't evil, they help us adapt. But if the mask stops fitting the face, it chafes. We push harder, promising early alarms and perfect streaks, while a quieter truth whispers that what we're pursuing doesn't match what we actually need. That mismatch drains energy and turns discipline into theater. We act disciplined in public, then collapse in private, then judge ourselves for the collapse. The cycle repeats, louder each time. A wiser approach begins with alignment, not aggression. Before optimizing calendars, we ask gentler, braver questions. What do I truly want more of? What parts of me revolt at my plan, and why? Which needs have I labeled weak that are, in fact, neglected sources of stability, rest, play, companionship, honest grief? We don't conquer these parts, we listen to them. Integration beats suppression. This isn't an excuse to drift. It's a strategy to endure. When inner signals are acknowledged, resistance falls. Habits stop feeling like a courtroom sentence and start feeling like care. We design routines that honor physiology, sleep, food, movement, and psychology, focus, recovery, meaning. We choose fewer promises and keep them longer. We measure success by returns over seasons, not fireworks in a week. Practical shifts follow from this view. Pair goals with reasons that matter to you, not to your imagined audience. Make starting easy and quitting hard. Environmental design beats heroic pep talks. Expect friction and plan recovery the way athletes plan deload weeks. Track patterns with curiosity, not shame, so data becomes dialogue. Celebrate small, boring wins, they compound into identity. Ask yourself, this week, for one experiment, choose a habit you've been shoulding, and renegotiate it with every part of you at the table. Name the real purpose, shrink the scope until resistance relaxes, add a cue that feels kind, add a reward that nurtures, not numbs. Write down the first early warning signs that you're slipping into performance, tight jaw, rushed mornings, secret resentment, and decide a compassionate response in advance. Replace try harder with check alignment. If fatigue spikes, lower intensity without breaking the chain. If boredom creeps in, refresh the meaning, not just the method. When persona and self move closer, the river carries you farther with fewer strokes, and discipline becomes the quiet art of staying in tune. Today. The psyche's hidden machinery. Most self-help advice treats discipline like a light switch. Flip it on with enough determination, and results follow. But anyone who has tried to build a long-term habit knows it doesn't work that way. You can push hard for a while, strict routines, early alarms, carefully tracked goals, but something inside eventually rebels. Motivation fades, resistance grows, and routines collapse. To understand why, we have to look deeper than willpower and examine the machinery of the psyche itself. The human mind is not a single, unified command center. The conscious ego, our daily I, is only one part of a much larger system. Beneath it lies the unconscious, a vast and dynamic field. It is not a static storehouse of forgotten memories. It is active, filled with desires, fears, complexes, and archetypes that continue to shape behavior even when unacknowledged. In fact, the more we repress or ignore these elements, the more powerfully they act. This is why discipline so often fails. When you try to impose a rigid schedule while neglecting unconscious needs, you create inner conflict. The ego insists on one path, while unconscious forces quietly resist. You wake up determined to study, but a wave of fatigue or distraction pulls you elsewhere. You decide to commit to exercise, but procrastination or compulsive indulgence derails you. On the surface, it looks like weakness. In reality, it is the psyche expressing tension, unseen parts of you refusing to be silenced. Think of it like rowing upstream. The conscious mind strains forward, but currents beneath the surface push back. The harder you row without acknowledging the current, the more exhausted you become. This is why many people experience cycles of enthusiasm followed by burnout. It isn't simply lack of grit, it's divided energy. Modern productivity culture makes this worse. It teaches us to override our signals, no excuses, no rest, no deviation. That works briefly, but long-term it deepens the split between conscious will and unconscious needs. What gets labeled as discipline becomes repression, and repression always leaks out, through irritability, anxiety, compulsions, or even physical illness. The solution is not more force, but more listening. The unconscious is not an enemy, it is a partner in need of recognition. Each lapse in discipline is a message, not a verdict. Fatigue may point to unresolved emotions. Procrastination may reflect a task misaligned with your deeper values. Even compulsions carry information, they reveal needs you've exiled but not erased. Building lasting discipline requires integration. Instead of asking only, how do I push harder, ask, what part of me resists, and what does it want? This shifts discipline from a battlefield into a negotiation. You can design habits that serve both conscious goals and unconscious needs, study paired with rest, work infused with meaning, health practices flexible enough to honor enjoyment. When willpower works with the unconscious instead of against it, energy flows more smoothly. Discipline no longer feels like a war inside your head. It becomes less about brute force and more about harmony, an agreement between all the parts of your psyche to move in the same direction. That is the true machinery of discipline, not domination, but integration. The rejected self and self-sabotage. Of all the forces that quietly erode discipline, none is as slippery as self-sabotage. It's not an outside enemy, not lack of time or resources, but something that seems to rise from within. You make a clear plan, begin with energy, and then, almost without noticing, you start to delay, avoid, or even destroy the very progress you wanted. From the outside, it looks irrational. From the inside, it feels frustrating, like you're split in two. Depth psychology reframes this phenomenon as the rejected self claiming its ground. Throughout life, each of us learns which emotions and traits are acceptable and which aren't. Anger, vulnerability, certain desires, even needs for rest or pleasure, if these conflict with family rules, cultural norms, or our self-image, they get exiled into the unconscious. But repression doesn't erase them. It only hides them, and the hidden always seeks return. Self-sabotage is one of the main ways the rejected self speaks. When the conscious ego builds a shiny image of the disciplined person, always productive, always in control, it often does so at the expense of these exiled parts. That sets up a hidden tug-of-war. The more rigidly we cling to the ideal, the more strongly the rejected self pushes back. Procrastination, sudden fatigue, compulsive distractions, or emotional outbursts aren't simply weakness, they're unconscious attempts to restore balance to a lopsided system. Take a familiar example. Someone adopts an extreme productivity plan, work long hours, cut out leisure, focus only on output. For a while, momentum carries them. But slowly, resistance creeps in. They find themselves scrolling endlessly, oversleeping, or snapping at minor inconveniences. The rejected self, the playful child, the tired body, the grieving heart, demands space. If ignored, it will intensify sabotage until the plan collapses. This dynamic is not malicious. It is compensatory. The psyche resists being split into all discipline and no rest. Self-sabotage is less a flaw and more a signal. Some exiled part is knocking on the door. The deeper the repression, the louder the knock. So what can be done? The first step is recognition. Instead of scolding yourself for failure, pause and ask, which part of me is resisting, and why? Is it fear of failure disguised as distraction? Is it a need for rest hidden beneath guilt? Is it creativity suffocating under monotony? Each answer shifts sabotage from an enemy to a teacher. The second step is integration. That doesn't mean indulging every impulse, but giving the rejected parts their rightful place. Rest can be structured into routines instead of fought against. Emotional needs can be acknowledged through journaling, therapy, or honest conversations. Play and pleasure can be allowed without undermining discipline, but actually strengthening it. When the rejected self is heard, its energy transforms. What once fueled sabotage becomes available for growth. Habits feel less like cages and more like expressions of balance. Discipline, then, is not the silencing of resistance, but its integration. This is the paradox. True strength isn't endless control, it's wholeness. By embracing the rejected self, discipline shifts from a constant struggle to a more natural rhythm, one in which all parts of the psyche move in the same direction. Individuation, aligning will and center. Lasting discipline doesn't come from brute endurance, it emerges from a deeper psychological journey called individuation. Coined by Carl Jung, individuation is the process of integrating all aspects of the psyche, the conscious and unconscious, the shadow and the persona, the masculine and feminine energies, into a coherent whole. Instead of trying to force discipline through sheer willpower, we build it by aligning with this deeper center. Most people live in fragmentation. The ego wants one thing: to study, to train, to succeed. Meanwhile, the unconscious longs for something else: rest, freedom, or hidden fears disguised as resistance. The persona, the mask we wear for society, adds another demand: appear efficient, productive, admirable. These conflicting voices scatter energy. It's like pulling a cart with horses running in different directions. Progress stalls, not because of weakness, but because the psyche isn't unified. Individuation begins when we stop fighting these divisions and start listening to them. The repressed memories, the rejected desires, the disowned traits, all hold clues. By acknowledging them, instead of burying them, we reduce their disruptive power. Integration doesn't mean indulging every impulse, but giving each part of ourselves its proper seat at the table. The playful child, the grieving adult, the ambitious worker, all can coexist without tearing each other apart. As individuation deepens, something important shifts. Discipline ceases to be a daily war. When all parts of the psyche are aligned around a central axis, the self, there is no longer such a stark split between what I want and what I should do. Goals chosen from this place resonate with authenticity. They don't feel imposed by culture or expectation, but arise naturally from within. That resonance gives them staying power. Consider someone trying to write every morning. If they pursue this purely to look productive, the mask will eventually crack. But if writing connects with their deeper need for expression, for truth, for creating something meaningful, then the discipline flows more easily. The habit doesn't drain energy, it returns it, because it aligns with the self. This is why many people fail to keep commitments that seemed rational. Rationality alone isn't enough. Without inner alignment, the unconscious resists. But when discipline grows out of individuation, effort feels lighter, even joyful. Work becomes less about performance and more about authentic expression. There's another gift of individuation, clarity. Many goals crumble because they were never ours to begin with. They were inherited from family expectations, cultural pressures, or borrowed ideals. Individuation strips those away, revealing what actually matters. When we choose goals rooted in authentic meaning, resistance weakens. The ego and unconscious move together, not apart. So the foundation of unbreakable discipline isn't harsher self-control. It is coherence. It is gathering the scattered forces of the psyche into alignment, so willpower isn't a lone soldier but a unified army. In this harmony, discipline doesn't feel imposed, it becomes the natural rhythm of an integrated life. This is the deeper secret. Discipline isn't about suppressing who we are. It's about becoming whole, so that everything we do flows from the center of our being. Meeting the shadow. If individuation is the path to inner alignment, then meeting the shadow is one of its most challenging but vital steps. In Jungian psychology, the shadow refers to all the parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or hide because they feel unacceptable or dangerous. These can include anger, envy, lust, selfishness, laziness, traits that clash with the image we want to project. Yet pushing them away does not erase them. On the contrary, what we bury in the unconscious often returns with greater force, influencing our behavior from behind the curtain. In the context of discipline, the shadow plays a particularly disruptive role. You might try to maintain a strict study schedule, only to find yourself mysteriously too tired or suddenly absorbed in trivial distractions. You plan a month of clean eating, yet cravings overwhelm you at night. These aren't simply slips in willpower. They are the shadow's way of making its presence known. Every time you overindulge, procrastinate, or sabotage your own efforts, it is often not because you are weak, it is because an unacknowledged part of you is taking its turn at the wheel. The mistake many people make is to wage war against these impulses. They double down on control, create harsher rules, or punish themselves for slipping. But repression only adds fuel to the shadow. The more it is denied, the more energy it gathers, waiting for the next opportunity to break free. What begins as a small neglected impulse can become an obsession, an addiction, or an emotional breakdown. The healthier path is integration. This means turning toward the shadow with honesty and curiosity. For example, instead of asking, "Why am I so lazy?" you might ask, "What is this laziness trying to tell me?" Perhaps it's signaling burnout. Perhaps it's masking fear of failure. Or maybe it's pointing to a hidden desire for freedom and play that your strict routine has suffocated. By naming and listening to the shadow, you transform its disruptive force into useful information. Integration doesn't mean indulging every impulse. It means acknowledging them, respecting their presence, and finding healthier ways for them to be expressed. Anger, when faced, can become assertiveness. Fear can sharpen caution. Desire can fuel creativity. Even procrastination, once understood, can reveal whether a goal lacks real meaning. Meeting the shadow requires courage because it forces you to admit truths that conflict with your self-image. You may discover that part of you craves recognition more than the task itself. Or that you fear success because it brings responsibility. These insights are uncomfortable, but they are the gateway to real discipline. Once the shadow is integrated, it no longer needs to sabotage you, it becomes an ally, adding strength rather than stealing it. Discipline built without shadow work is brittle. It shatters under stress. But discipline that arises after integrating the shadow is flexible, resilient, and sustainable. It has depth, because it no longer excludes parts of who you are. It is not about controlling impulses at all costs, but about knowing them, negotiating with them, and redirecting their energy. The real secret is this: you can only control what you're willing to face. And by facing your shadow, discipline transforms from a battle into a balanced partnership within the whole self. Persona versus self, the trap of misalignment. If the shadow represents what we hide, the persona represents what we show. It is the social mask we wear to function in the world, the polite professional, the diligent student, the dependable friend. The persona is not inherently false, it helps us navigate society's expectations. The danger comes when we confuse this mask for our authentic self. And nowhere is that more evident than in the pursuit of discipline. Many people chase discipline not to serve their true needs, but to serve their persona. They want to appear hardworking, admirable, flawless. They design routines not because they align with inner purpose, but because they look impressive to others. At first, this mask-driven discipline works. It earns praise, validation, maybe even promotions. But beneath the applause, fatigue grows. Why? Because living from the persona alone drains psychic energy. Every action becomes an act of performance, every slip a threat to the mask. Perfectionism, guilt, and anxiety soon follow. In this misalignment, discipline is brittle. It lasts only as long as the ego can maintain the show. Once the mask cracks, through burnout, boredom, or crisis, the whole structure collapses. This is why so many ambitious resolutions fizzle. They were never rooted in the self, they were attempts to maintain an image. The self, in Jung's terms, is the authentic center of the psyche, the wholeness that includes conscious intentions and unconscious depths. When discipline springs from the self, it feels very different. Instead of constant effort, there is congruence. The actions align with genuine values and deep motivations. Energy flows instead of leaking. Habits endure not because of rigid enforcement but because they matter. Consider the difference. One person trains obsessively at the gym to appear disciplined and admirable. Their routine is rigid, fueled by external validation. Eventually, resentment builds, and the habit shatters. Another person trains because movement helps them feel alive, strong, and grounded. Their discipline is steady, not flashy, and persists even without recognition. The difference is alignment with self versus servitude to persona. The trap of the persona is subtle, because masks often look admirable. Who doesn't want to appear disciplined? But if discipline is maintained solely for appearances, the unconscious revolts. Symptoms emerge: procrastination, emptiness, chronic fatigue. These are not failures of character, they are signs that the self is demanding truth. Real discipline requires peeling back the mask. This means asking difficult questions. Am I doing this for me, or for how others will see me? Does this habit connect to something I truly value, or is it just for the role I want to play? It requires courage to let go of borrowed goals and admit when the mask has driven your effort. When the persona and self align, discipline transforms. Habits feel authentic rather than forced. Progress is steady rather than brittle. The mask no longer controls the performance, it becomes a flexible tool, an outer expression of inner truth. This is the balance: the persona is still useful, but it no longer dictates. Instead, it reflects. True discipline cannot be a mask. It must be a mirror of the self. And when that alignment is reached, effort feels lighter, endurance grows stronger, and daily practice becomes a reflection of who you are, not who you pretend to be. Meaning is the fuel. After exploring shadow, persona, and the unconscious, we arrive at the most decisive principle of all: discipline cannot survive without meaning. You can craft the most elegant routines, design flawless schedules, and summon bursts of motivation, but if what you are doing feels empty, it will eventually collapse. The psyche does not run on mechanics alone. It runs on purpose. Think of energy as the bloodstream of discipline. Willpower can push you forward for a while, like a runner sprinting on adrenaline, but unless your actions are infused with significance, the energy drains out. Jung described psychic energy as libido in the broader sense, not only sexual drive, but the life force that moves us. That force flows most powerfully when attached to something meaningful, something that touches the self. This explains why people often fail at goals that looked rational. They try to maintain a routine because they should, or because it looks respectable. For a time, sheer pressure works. But the unconscious resists. Without deeper resonance, boredom creeps in, fatigue mounts, and self-sabotage takes over. No checklist or productivity hack can fill the gap left by absence of meaning. When actions connect to meaning, however, the experience changes completely. Tasks stop feeling like punishments and begin to feel like expressions of life itself. A runner who trains because they value vitality and clarity will keep running long after someone who trains only to impress others has quit. A writer who sees their craft as a way to uncover truth will sustain discipline through years of work, while another who writes only for approval will burn out quickly. Meaning is what turns discipline from drudgery into devotion. This is why the final and most important step in building unbreakable discipline is asking, why am I doing this? If your answer is shallow, because I should, because others expect it, your discipline will always be fragile. But if the answer resonates with something authentic, because it aligns with who I am, because it serves what I most value, then discipline becomes self-sustaining. Practical reflection helps here. For any habit or goal, ask, what deeper value does this serve? Does this align with my authentic self, or only with my social mask? How do I feel when I imagine living with this habit for years? Alive, or drained? If the answers reveal emptiness, it may be time to let that goal go. Abandoning a hollow pursuit is not failure, it's an act of truth. No amount of rigid effort can replace the vitality that meaning provides. The paradox is that once discipline is connected to meaning, it often requires less willpower. Energy flows naturally. You don't have to drag yourself to practice, you are drawn to it. The struggle shifts from forcing to following. The path may still demand effort, but the effort feels lighter, charged with purpose. This is the crown of discipline, alignment between action and meaning. Without it, discipline is fragile theater. With it, discipline becomes a living force, steady, resilient, and deeply human. It is not a performance for others, but an authentic rhythm of a life lived in coherence with itself.